Ever find yourself just browsing Voyager Direct, lost in the specs of some crazy gun and thinking, who comes up with this stuff?
Well, that's what we're doing today, diving deep into the companies, the minds behind the weaponry.
It's kind of more than just firepower, though, right?
Yeah.
These manufacturers, their weapons, how they do business, it all adds up. It tells you a lot about Star Citizen itself.
Right. It's a window into
exactly.
the soul of the verse, in a way.
So, ready to unlock some secrets, one weapon manufacturer at a time?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Perfect. Let's start with those rooted in human history. Bearing Applied Technology, Klaus and Werner, Gemini. Those are practically household names, right?
More like institutions.
Yeah.
And their history. It's a long one. Bearing, for example. They've been top dogs since, 2554? Their laser tech really set the bar.
Right, but they're not just weapons, are they?
No, not at all. Computers, shields, missiles. They got their hands in everything. I even heard rumors about some top-secret bearing labs out in the Killian system, working on who knows what for the UE military.
Makes you wonder who's really in charge sometimes, huh?
It does make you wonder. But about bearing, kind of ironic, actually.
What's up?
They almost went bankrupt early on.
You're kidding. I always thought they were giants from the start.
Nope. They had some rough years, especially competing with Klaus and Werner, founded by, get this, a former Bearing employee.
Now, that's how you make a statement. What was K&W's angle? What made them stand out?
Think less mass production, more like handcrafted quality. Each weapon's like an extension of the pilot,
I can see that.
That rugged, classic feel. Their Arclight 2 pistol even made it onto that Spectrum show, The Frontier.
Talk about product placement.
They weren't subtle, that's for sure.
But it clearly worked. And you can't talk about different approaches without mentioning Gemini. Talk about adapting to the market.
Oh, absolutely. They were all about kinetics originally.
Sure.
But when laser tech took over, smart move, they bought out Octa, that little energy weapons startup, back in the 2930s, I think.
Went from old school ballistics to cutting edge energy weapons practically overnight. Now look at them. Sleek designs definitely found their niche. But it makes you think, how do these smaller guys, the niche companies, how do they even survive next to these titans?
Like Ultiflex. Right?
Yeah, Ultiflex, good example.
They just do combat knives, but that FSK-8 they make,
yeah,
legendary.
Standard issue for the UEE military, even in civilian survival kits. It's proof that sometimes focusing on one thing, perfecting it, that's the key.
Do one thing and do it well.
Exactly.
But niche doesn't always mean purely practical, does it? Take Preacher armaments. It's niche, but with, let's say, personality.
With Preacher on your side, they haven't got a prayer. Hard to forget that slogan.
A bit much, maybe, but unforgettable. And that's what matters. These companies need to stand out.
It's true. It's
almost like they're not just selling a gun, they're selling an image, a story, their whole deal.
They buy into a brand as much as a weapon.
Exactly. It's fascinating, though, how certain weapons, they kind of become relics.
Yeah.
Like the TEJ-8.
The TEJ-8, oh, you mean that old combustion pistol. 200 years they made that thing.
I know, right? 2 centuries.
Some would say that speaks to its reliability. But yeah, collector's item now. Shows you how far we've come. From those clunky combustion models to the energy weapons of today.
Makes you wonder, though, is there ever going to be, like, a comeback?
For the old designs.
Yeah. I mean, everything old is new again eventually.
Enough. And some manufacturers never fully abandoned ballistics anyway.
Oh, absolutely. Like Golden Lion, they still cater to that crowd. The ones who prefer a good, solid thud of a kinetic round over the hum of a laser. Goes to show there's still a place for the classics, even in the 30th century.
It's a diverse market out there.
It is, but it's not all about just raw firepower, is it?
Not at all.
Companies like Rusimov Rehabilitation Systems, they're proof of that. They remind us that sometimes there's a different way.
Right, less lethal options.
Yeah, exactly. Like their Faction 9 stun baton. The advocacy uses it all the time. It's all about law enforcement, peacekeeping. Not everything has to go boom.
Exactly.
But it gets really interesting when you start looking beyond just human warfare, right?
Yeah.
We're not the only ones in the hearse. And we sure don't have a monopoly on making weapons.
Absolutely. And there's one company in particular that really highlights the whole intersection of technology, culture, you could even say diplomacy when you think about it. We're talking about Toral Aggregate. Or if you prefer Shin, it's Aunuseti Taralot. Their history goes back, well, millennia. Weapons are practically woven into their culture,
Millennia? Wow. That's hard to even grasp. I mean, they were making weapons before humans even left Earth. That kind of legacy has got to be something else.
You hear stories about techniques passed down for generations. This blend of ancient craftsmanship with cutting-edge tech. And now, get this, they're adapting those designs for humans to use. That's not just a business deal. It's a whole cultural exchange thing happening.
Lasers and missiles bridging the cultural divide. Who knew? But it makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This company, all this tradition, and they decide to share that knowledge with humans. Is that a good sign? Like, are we really earning their trust? Or is this more strategic? Get a leg up however they can.
Both good points. And don't forget, the Shan-Human Cold War, that wasn't that long ago. Those old anti-ship mines, leftovers from that whole mess, they're still out there, still a danger in some of those former Perry-line systems.
Yikes. Kind of a reminder that no matter how much things change, some things from the past, they stick around. Which, brings me to something I've been meaning to ask. The ethics of it all. Because when you're talking companies making a profit from weapons, it's got to get a little murky sometimes.
There's definitely a tension there.
Right.
Between innovation and responsibility, and nobody embodies that quite like Hurston Dynamics.
Oh yeah, them. They're like the ultimate example of corporate power gone wild. They own an entire planet, dictate practically every aspect of their workers' lives.
It's a pretty bleak picture, honestly.
Oh, almost feudal in a way.
It really makes you question the UEE, doesn't it? How can they let this happen? Turning a blind eye to what's essentially exploitation.
It's a slippery slope, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But hey, not all weapon manufacturers are like that. Some companies, they're pushing boundaries, but in a good way, driven by innovation, not just profit margins.
You're thinking of intergalactic research concepts, right?
Bingo.
Huh.
IRC, the mad scientists of the weapons world. Plasma weapons, Tachyon tech, you name it. They're all about pushing the limits.
And they're not afraid to take their time, years, even decades, to achieve a breakthrough. That level of dedication to R&D is practically unheard of.
It's like they're not just making weapons, they're shaping the future of warfare.
It does make you wonder, what if they get too good, too far ahead of everyone else?
That's a good point. Though you've also got companies like Volelt proving you don't always need cutting edge to succeed.
Vol-T. Right, they're all about affordability. Not everyone can afford a plasma cannon.
Exactly. Sometimes it's better to have a reliable tool than a fancy one that breaks.
True. And then, of course, you have companies like Joker Engineering. They don't just blur the lines, they practically erase them.
Oh, Joker Engineering. Talk about a wild card. Their catalog is like a wish list from a particularly creative weapons enthusiast.
Their beacon bomb, for example.
Oh, right.
To weaponize a distress signal. It's brilliant, if a little, shall we say, morally ambiguous.
More than a little. What's their brainstorming process like? Okay, what's the most unexpected thing we can turn into a weapon?
One shudders to imagine. But it does highlight the importance of surprise in warfare.
Expect the unexpected, right? Though with Joker Engineering, who knows what that even means?
Precisely. And as we delve deeper into this world of weaponry, we find even more companies that challenge easy categorization. Military and civilian, offense and defense. Those lines start to get very blurry.
Blurry lines, huh? Now that's interesting. Tell me more. Who are we talking about?
Well, there's Sakura Sun, for example. They built their whole reputation on, well, let's just say more wholesome products.
Wholesome.
Yeah, like home goods, children's toys, that kind of family-friendly image.
Okay, I'm seeing it.
And then, boom, 2922, they dropped this multi-particle wave cannon.
Whoa, talk about a curveball. So what, were they working on weapons tech this whole time? Just hiding in plain sight?
Maybe. Or maybe they just saw an opportunity. I mean, to build something like that wave cannon, that takes serious R&D. They had the brains, clearly.
Shows you can't judge a company by its teddy bears and toasters, I guess.
Exactly. Appearances can be deceiving.
That they can. But it's also kind of cool, right? How interconnected everything is.
Absolutely. Like, take thermite concern.
Yeah.
They started out making heavy machinery, mining equipment, big drills, that kind of thing.
Makes sense.
Then they took that knowledge and bam, missile warheads.
Logical next step, really.
Right. Same principles, just bigger boom.
It's like that saying, want peace, prepare for war. But in this case, it's want to mine asteroids.
Yeah.
Be ready to defend them.
Exactly. Speaking of blurring lines, though, we got to talk about companies like Apocalypse Arms. They seem to have a thing for the old ways.
Oh yeah, Apocalypse Arms. They're the vintage weapons folks, right?
Yeah.
All about that Messer-era aesthetic.
More than just an aesthetic. Those old designs, they have a certain craftsmanship, history built in.
Like collecting antique guns, but, spaceship scale.
Something like that. But while some companies are all about the past, others, they're focused on the future. Especially when it comes to missiles.
Missiles. Can't go wrong with a good old-fashioned payload delivery system.
And when it comes to missiles, Talon weapon systems, they're the veterans, around since the Teveran Wars even.
Wow, the Teveran Wars. And they're still in the game. That's saying something.
They were actually some of the first to really push for the right to arm civilian spacecraft, way back when it was controversial.
Huh. So they're like trailblazers, in a way.
You could say that. Their legal battles back then, they set a precedent, shaped the way self-defense works in the UEE even today. Really makes you think these companies, they're not just building weapons, they're shaping society itself.
Powerful stuff.
It is. And then you've got the newcomers, like Badger Bad, trying to shake things up.
Badger Bad, right. They're going for the high-powered but cheap angle.
A risky strategy. You get what you pay for, especially with weapons.
Tell it to Nova Pyrotechnica. Remember them. They were notorious for their budget-friendly firepower, except when it didn't work.
Right. Their reliability issues were legendary.
It's like the saying goes, the best weapon is the one you have when you need it. Unless, of course, it decides to misfire at the worst possible moment.
Very true. It's a good reminder that for all the advanced tech in the verse, sometimes it comes down to the basics. Does it work or doesn't it?
No point having a fancy gun if it jams when you need it most.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? It feels like we've only scratched the surface of this whole world of weapons manufacturers.
We have, but if there's one thing we've learned, it's that these companies, these weapons, they're a reflection of Star Citizen itself. The ambition, the innovation, the conflicts, it's all there.
It's more than just pointing and shooting, isn't it? It's about the stories behind the tech, the people who make it, the ones who use it.
Exactly. And those stories, they're still being written. Every new weapon, every corporate merger, every conflict, it all adds to the tapestry of this universe.
So next time you're browsing Voyager Direct, lost in the specs of some futuristic gun, remember, it's more than just metal and energy. There's a whole universe of stories behind that trigger. Thanks for joining us as we delve into the fascinating and sometimes terrifying world of Star Citizen's weapon manufacturers.
Until next time.